Greetings, hello. Welcome to TMI Live 57, I think maybe 58 at this point. Literacies Lost and Found. It's Tuesday night, it's 9 p.m. Eastern, and I am here in the headquarters of the McLuhan Institute, the library of Eric McLuhan, where weekly on a Tuesday night at about 9 p.m. I try to talk with you live. And my friend Alfonso is in the house. Are you receiving me loud and clear, Alfonso? I'll say yes. Good. So here we are. It's been a pretty crazy time, as will be reflected by my workstation, which is quite chaotic right now. If you could see the rest of the space, there's files and books and things everywhere, and I'm going to take that as a sign of some kind of good activity happening. I wanted to speak tonight a little bit. All good, beautiful, thank you. Clinton, hey, nice to have some regulars in the house. I wanted to speak a little bit. I titled this Literacies Lost and Found because I've been kind of going deep into this idea of literate culture, pre-literate culture, post-literate culture, and maybe even prospects for re-literacy, if we are indeed post-literacy, as people have suggested for well over 50 years now. Prospects for re-literacy and what that might mean. This started for me a couple weeks ago now, I guess. I was invited by David Goronowski to be on his Things Hidden podcast, which actually became available, I think, tonight, if you want to check that out. We had a really good discussion. He's comes from the René Girard camp, which deals a lot with mimetic desire. And although I'm not totally up on that, when I heard from him and he said the word mimesis, my mind went elsewhere. And that is, in the McLuhan world, mimesis has other meanings, which I'm not sure are quite at odds with Girard or other people, but are specific in any case. And I've been tracking down, I have maybe more question than answers on this subject right now, but that's because I'm hot on the trail. So I've been looking around and trying to, this started because I was being asked to go on that podcast, and I thought I should maybe have a handle on what this all means. So I've been going around through my various McLuhan bits and pieces here and trying to find where Marshall and my father Eric talk about Mimesis, and it's come up some interesting places. I knew that I would find it here in Eric Havelock's Preface to Plato. And indeed, I have Eric McLuhan's copy, which this was published in 1963. My father wrote his name in it in 1968, March 1968, and that's when he got it. This book is great, this particular edition, because it has a lot of notes in it from my father, which are always helpful to me. The usual things, Cliché, okay. So, annotations such as figure and ground to figure, and Cliché to Archetype. Cliché to Archetype is about to come up again. Formal cause is in here. There's something fun in the back that I found. This is great because this is one of the books in the library which has both Marshall's and Eric's annotations in it. And that's always a treat for me to find, seeing as Marshall's library is no longer here, but now in Toronto at the Fisher Rare Book Library, which is quite far away in space and time for me. But here we have notes by Marshall and Eric, and a special treat on the back, which it's backwards, but I'll hold it up to the camera anyway. And on the back here we have a tetrad for the triad and triad for the tetrad. The top here, it says triad, and it has A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D is an early way that the McLuhans laid out the tetrad. They moved away from it fairly quickly because they found it easily led towards sequential thought, and the whole idea behind the tetrad is simultaneity. So they moved away from listing things as A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or anything like that, and instead moved to a graphic representation, which would sometimes move around a bit so you didn't get caught into any particular layout. So this is interesting because it has a triad, a tetrad for the triad, and a triad for the tetrad, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, with Eric and Marshall's notes in both, which is pretty cool, and is going to take a lot of going through. Preface to Plato. I haven't gotten too far into it yet. I've got a lot of reading right now, but I'm dipping in, and what I know about it so far is that it's a book about the conditions in Greece before the alphabet, and its effects, essentially. The condition of everyday people before the alphabet, before the written word. The main transmission of culture was verbal, from mouth to ear. And so this meant a lot of things, obviously, but part of that condition was this is where the word mimesis comes in, and mimesis is used to describe the way that the audience was intimately involved in the story, in the poetry, involved to such a degree that the person in the audience identified so thoroughly that they became part of the story, that they didn't just identify with or hear about Achilles, they became Achilles. And this depth of involvement accounted for the strong bond between hearer and speaker and the subject matter, and ensured the accurate transmission of knowledge. Later, Plato would talk about how writing would kill the memory and things like this. Mouth to ear, oral to oral. Quite so. S. Alfonso Williams. Oh, it's a treat to have you here. Anyway, this gets picked up in other places here. So moving on from Preface to Plato, actually moving a little bit back, 1953, Explorations 1 has a piece by Marshall McLuhan, Culture Without Literacy. This is a really remarkable essay. It's long and it's involved and deep. It's very literary. It's not the the Marshall McLuhan language that you might be familiar with from the 60s and 70s. As far as I was able to tell, it's only been reprinted in one place, and that is this wild McLuhan Unbound, Marshall McLuhan Unbound collection from Ginkgo Press. I don't think this is available anymore. I think it's out of print. This is a collection of 20 supposed off-prints or essays collected together, rare ones, and Culture Without Literacy is one of them. All sorts of things. At the Moment is Sputnik, Medium is the Message, Laws of the Media. Is environment in here? I think the relation of environment to anti-environment is in here as well. But this remarkable essay, oh shoot, there they all go. More chaos. This remarkable essay, Culture Without Literacy, is in there, and this also gets into mimesis and the condition of pre-literacy. So I'll read this excerpt here. If prehistoric man is simply pre-literate man living in a timeless world of seasonal recurrence, might not post-historic man find himself in a similar situation? Might not the upshot of our technology be the awakening from the historically conditioned nightmare of the past into a timeless present. Historic man may turn out to have been literate man, an episode. There's a lot here. Oh, there's the bit about Plato. Faced with the consequence of writing, Plato notes in the Phaedrus, this discovery of yours will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls because they will not use their memories. They will trust to the external written characters and not remember themselves. The specific which you have discovered is an aid not to memory, but to reminiscence, and you give your disciples not truth, but only the semblance of truth. They will be hearers of many things and have learned nothing. They will appear to be omniscient and will generally know nothing. They will be tiresome company, having the show of wisdom without the reality. I think this is a little more spot on to the computer user generation. But it's interesting that Plato here is talking about technology. And it's so easy for us in these modern times where we're surrounded by, blinking, blooping lights, notifications, and digital technologies to lose sight of how wide that word technology is, how broad what it encompasses, and languages are certainly very, very, if not the most powerful of our technologies. So anyway, it goes on and it covers a wide range of things. But my father Eric picks this up a few different places. In this book from 2015, The Sensus, Communis, Synesthesia, and the Soul. I've been getting into this too because it has a lot to say. And the opening, he says, 50 years ago, Eric Havelock wrote in preface to Plato about Plato's, quote, war with the bards over their use of mimesis. Their approach engendered the total, almost pathological involvement of the hearer in the poetic performance, an involvement so profound that the hearer effectively became the poem. He put on the characters, he spoke their words, he performed their actions, he suffered, triumphed, exulted, despaired as they did, and he did this so completely that a single exposure fixed the recitation perfectly in his memory for the rest of his life. The bit which really blows my mind comes up here. Plato was determined to break the spell and inculcate instead the exotic new skills of abstract thought and objectivity that accompanied the alphabet. Abstraction was essential to the new science of philosophy. So Plato waged the first media war. Aristotle continued the campaign with an immensely powerful technology of his own devising, the syllogism. This to me is fascinating that Eric McLuhan is suggesting here that the syllogism was a technology, a device created by Aristotle to bring about the literate condition, to bring about the power of abstraction for the aid of philosophy and these new sciences. And he goes quite on. There's an appendix in the back, Aristotle's Media War, which goes into, here we start to cross boundaries because it goes into theories of communication. Did I mark something out in here? I think I did. Anyway, in theories of communication, we have Aristotle's theory of communication, Cicero's theory of communication, all various and sundry theories of communication. I think I've talked about this before. The theory of communication thing is very simple. That's a formula that runs any person's theory of communication is their intended audience plus their intended effect. So Marshall and then Eric would always be on the lookout. It's one of the annotations you find in their books, TOC, which they would flag whenever they found an author or somebody indicating their intended audience or their intended effect. So this book is full of meditations on various people's theories of communication. But it includes an appendix here, Appendix 3, Mimesis, or Making Sense, Marshall McLuhan with Wilfred Watson, which brings us, by this strange way, to From Cliché to Archetype. And as it happens, these things all come in around with each other. I found out about this because I have this copy of the appendix. This is actually a draft. It's noted as Appendix 1, but it was published as Appendix 3 of Theories of Communication. And you move to it, and you've got M for Mimesis, or Making Sense. And this is another meditation, McLuhan meditation on mimesis, this pre-literate condition, which the reason this comes up so much in McLuhan work is Marshall was looking for ways to understand our current situation in the post-literate society. And it's cross-referencing all the way down, as Alfonso Williams. Marshall was keen to understand our current situation, to make a pun on electricity, since electricity basically electrocuted the printing press and ushered in this post-literate condition. As Marshall characterized in Explorations 1, Culture Without Literacy, that it might turn out that the literate age was a footnote, an aberration in history. Which, Marshall McLuhan, being a literature professor, was concerned about. He was quite fond of literature and, everything that happened. This copy of Cliché to Archetype is pretty cool because this is Eric's copy, and it's inscribed to him by Marshall McLuhan, saying, "With special thanks to Eric, for his conversation has taken us into Joyce's mysteries again and again," talking about cross-referencing. "You should have had a special word of acknowledgement for proofreading this book under most adverse conditions. Your protege pa, Marshall McLuhan." In fact, this book was published, was it 77? Let me see, Viking Press, New York. 1970, 70. But I know that he and Wilfred Watson were working on it for quite a long time, from earlier in the 60s, at least 6 years, I think, maybe even from before Understanding Media, so 62. And this has a fun note talking about, going over all kinds of territory. This has a note in Marshall's handwriting, which says, "Dear Wilfred," Wilfred Watson is co-author here, "we might be able to make effective use of information theory and entropy mechanics in Cliché to Archetype. Look at J.R. Pierce's Symbols, Signals, Noise, Harper Torch books, pages 42 to 43 and 65. Also for general idea of words as SC, 117, 185. SC as in, now we're getting all over the place, sensory closure. And this has a note from my father, from Eric, tucked in it here. Top corner, C/A, which is the McLuhan annotation from Cliché to Archetype. It says, "In any," underlined, "reissue, include the Flaubert between the chapters, and reposition the notes," says exclamation mark. And I think he says that because here at the very back, we have notes on sources. Now, this is a strange book because the contents are arranged alphabetically. So that chapter 1 is Absurd, Theater of Thee. And the introduction falls under I, which is further H, Heniitis, I. Introduction begins on page 117. So they took this book and they arranged it this way for specific reasons. My father's note there, he was angry because they put the notes at the end of the book, and notes on sources ought to be by rights under N. So further in and not at the end. What is the last chapter in this anyway? The last chapter is simply theater. So yeah, this journey into mimesis is taking me all over the place. The reason I got really into it, and why I'm still at it, although the interview with David Gronowski was the impetus, what kicked it off. A week ago, I met somebody who's developing a technology which is looking to bring augmented reality and virtual reality and these kind of alternate realities to books, to the printed word. And this is very interesting for me personally and from a McLuhan sense, because, again, to think of this word of reliteracy and user experience, mimesis is all about user experience, which is a hot button thing to talk about now, is, the tech people are obsessed with user experience. The prospects for adding augmented reality and things of that nature to print are huge. They're also potentially dangerous in that they could have a very large effect. The concern would be in maintaining the benefit of the printed word without erasing those benefits due to layering too much or any electric or digital technologies on top. Anyway, so these are things that I'm thinking about, and in order to get a handle on the present situation and the possibilities for the future, I find myself digging into the past, where luckily and handily Marshall and Eric McLuhan have tread before and left us plenty of food for thought. That's what I got for this week. Thank you so much for being here. Check out the McLuhaninstitute.com. Join the Patreon page if you would be so kind, and forgive my lack of communication over there. And be kind to each other. Take care of yourself. Take care.